350 million years ago, the sweltering rainforest of the Carboniferous period. Before you is one of the most terrifying creatures that have ever lived on our planet. A giant millipede, over 2.5 meters long.
A creature that looks like it came off the pages of a science fiction book, but it actually did exist. Perhaps it is just as well that it became extinct long before the first humans appeared.
A few 100 million years ago, the Earth was very different from what it is today.
If we looked at it from space, we would not have seen the familiar outlines of the continents and oceans. Because at that time, the entire landmass was one giant supercontinent called Nowadays, its fragments are in fact the continents so familiar to us. Some of them merged to form single landmasses, while the rest have changed when mountains and faults appeared.
The shores of the ancient continent were washed by truly great oceans.
The largest of these was Pangaea, which covered more than 50% of the planet. The other two, Tethys and Paleotethys, washed the eastern coast of Pangaea. Since oceanic crust changes much faster than continental crust, most of the rocks that made up the floor of these great oceans have long since dissolved into the planet's interior. It is thought that only parts of the seafloor in the Pacific Ocean still remember the touch of the waters of Pangaea. Pangaea at that time stretched across the planet from the northernmost latitudes to the southernmost latitudes and spanned a wide range of climatic belts. However, the general climate of our planet during this period was dry and cool, and the global sea levels were relatively low. Combined with the vast expanse of the supercontinent, this resulted in a continental or sharply continental climate reigning over much of Pangaea. It was characterized by low humidity and noticeable temperature variations. Cold winters with little snow alternated with hot, dry summers. Therefore, vast areas of Pangaea were lifeless, rocky deserts, and only along the equator and coasts did there stretch strips of sweltering and humid equatorial forests.
These forests were filled with tree ferns, horsetails, and lycopods, or tree-like.
Most of these plants are now extinct, leaving only a few relict species.
It was at this time that huge deposits of coal were formed, which gave the period its name, the Carboniferous.
Interestingly, with all the obvious benefits for humans, this phenomenon is in fact a consequence dating back to a global imbalance in the circulation of elements on our planet. The fact is that tree ferns did not yet have a developed root system, and bacteria of the Carboniferous had not yet learned to process the natural polymer lignin, the main component of their trunks.
Therefore, trees felled by the wind or killed by old age formed vast, pretty much impassable debris.
Subsequently buried under water or soil and slowly decomposing without oxygen or help from bacteria, deposits of coal were formed which are still used today. This process was the basis for global change and transformation. The fact is that tree trunks which were not able to decompose trapped huge amounts of carbon. This caused carbon dioxide levels to drop and oxygen concentration to rise in the atmosphere, increasing from 15 to 30% over millions of years.
For a long time, the oxygen content in the air was noticeably higher than today's levels.
This factor was one of the keys to the emergence of truly giant insects. Another reason was the lack of competition. Vertebrates had only just begun venturing onto land.
And it was at this time that the largest known insects, Meganeura, lived on Earth.
They existed about 300 million years ago. Their wingspan was up to 75 centimeters, but their weight was only 100 to 150 grams, indicating a fragile physique and lightweight exoskeleton. Related to modern dragonflies, they had large compound eyes indicating good vision. They also had sharp spikes on their tibia and the ends of their legs, which functioned as a flying trap to capture prey. Modeling of their physiology shows that the body was very likely to overheat. This predator most likely favored fast but short flights, reaction speed, and lightning-fast darting movements. There is also a hypothesis according to which the respiratory system of these creatures relied on forced air injection into the tracheae. Meganeura lived in open spaces near the shores of bodies of water, feeding on other insects and possibly small vertebrates using their spiky legs. While the wings of giant dragonflies whooshed in the air of the Carboniferous period, the land was inhabited by monsters of a very different weight category. In the vast, sparse woodland near the water's edge, there lived perhaps the most terrifying arthropod in history, the giant millipede, Arthropleura. Analysis of fossil remains and trails found in wet soil shows that they could grow to a length of about 2.5 meters and a width of 50 centimeters. Based on modeling, it can be assumed that the mass of these giant millipedes was in the range of 50 to 100 kg. Known finds suggest that these creatures favored shallow waters and equatorial coasts. It is believed that the Arthropleura was amphibious. As it grew, it went through molting several times, shedding its shell and temporarily becoming more vulnerable to predators. It is suggested that during the molting period, it may have led a completely aquatic lifestyle, as its many legs became soft and could not carry its massive body. According to another hypothesis, the Arthropleura could wait out this dangerous period in hollows inside sappy tree trunks or in burrows specifically dug in wet soil. The Arthropleura had an elongated, flattened body divided into many segments, each with a pair of extremities. They were rather slow creatures. When the climate became less humid and large areas turned into deserts, the comfortable conditions vanished, and the Arthropleura naturally became extinct. Yet despite the rapid development of the terrestrial biosphere, most life still favored the sea. The elongated coastline of the ancient supercontinent provided vast expanses of ocean shelf, creating comfortable conditions for a multitude of living things. One of the most widespread groups in the seas and fresh waters of the ancient Earth were Eurypterids, or sea scorpions.
Interestingly, contrary to what many believe, these amazing creatures are not the ancestors of modern crustaceans or scorpions. They represent a separate branch of evolution.
The physical embodiment of these was a monster, the giant Eurypterids, which grew to be as long as 2.8 meters, one of the largest known arthropods in history.
The hydromechanics of their swimming paddles and fins suggest they were capable of hovering in the water, darting forward, and executing rapid turns.